I'm joined now by somebody who worked on all sorts of iconic and well-known series at the BBC, and perhaps it's no surprise that he came into contact with Doctor Who a number of times. So I'd like to introduce design assistant Les McCallum. How are you?
Hello, Alex. I'm fine, thanks.
Good. And you keep yourself busy?
Yes, really busy, yes. I do lots for an allotment, design wildlife pond, Zoom art class, and do the drawings for an RSPB local group magazine. So yes, more than busy.
Oh, good, good. And I wanted to take you back to 1974 when you, I think, first encountered Doctor Who. Was it a particularly busy show to work on?
They were all busy. It was a low-budget program at the time. We never gave it much thought, unless you were a Doctor Who fan. But it was just another job. And I think I worked on Doctor Who's I was a carpenter to start off with in the early days, and I used to work on that in the studios anyway. But we never knew much about the programs. It's only when I went into design that you actually read the scripts and got involved with the design. So, I mean, the very first work on the TARDIS, on the shop floor, we had a couple of designs for the TARDIS for different reasons. Some would go out on locations, and then they might be filming elsewhere. So there'd be 2 or 3 TARDIS in existence. And if you showed people around when they bring them in to see a show, they always wanted to see the TARDIS, which was on the shop floor. And they were most disappointed when they went inside. And I think they were expecting another dimension, but of course it's just slashed black felt at the back. And they were really disappointed to see nothing else in there, just a box. But anyway, it's always shot with the door opening so you don't see inside. Yeah. Right.
By the time you moved from carpenter to design assistant, would that be Doctor Who being quite an early job for you?
Yeah, I've worked on several, but I can't remember them all. I think you said Brain of Morbius, and there was several. So we worked on so many shows, you just can't remember them all. And it was just another show.
And I suppose you must be something of a historian to research something particularly like Doctor Who, because one week you might have an alien planet, the next week you might have Renaissance Italy. That must have been a great challenge each week.
Yeah, well, I worked with a designer who would do most of that. I would do most of do the drawings. We'd work together, make a model, rough model, see if it worked, see if the director liked it. Then I would draw it up for real to be made on the construction floor.
And one story that I think kept you particularly busy would have been the Masque and Mandragora, which was this Renaissance Italy story. Would a lot of that have come from stock, or would you have worked with Barry Newbury?
I can't remember much about that one. I can't remember. Yeah, we used most stock all the time, adding drapes and props, but most of it stock scenery. I should have got some. I'll do it very quickly. If I can find very quickly. I've got a stock book. Here we are. That's all right to do?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen this? Can you see? If you want columns, you select columns. If you wanted doors, fireplaces, anything, all there, panels, and then you'd select it, and because that's all the cheap way of doing it. It's all there, ready to use.
So would you start by going through the stock and then seeing what you needed to build or design, or do you design and then see what's in stock?
We'd make a rough outline of what you would need, and then you would see if any stock would fit into that plan, and then put it on the drawing, and then all the stock numbers there. Then someone would order it all. It would all come onto the shop floor, and someone would say, right, that goes there, that goes there. Then you'd put all the flats together, and any new make would be made on the shop floor and inserted in. Then the painters and chippies would finish it all off, adding mouldings or whatever. Yeah, quite. It seems quite complicated, but after a while, it just became routine. And then at the end of it, it would all be numbered on the plan where everything goes, and broken down, put on trolleys, and wheeled into the studio or left outside the studio for when it's required. The old Doctor Who TARDIS scene with all the big vents, that was all in steel frames, and that would all be stored outside on the ring road, and it was all rusty, and it was there for years. You'd bring it in a terrible state, clean it up, paint it, and yeah, so there you go. All right.
You came into contact with Victor Meredith on Doctor Who for Shada. How was he
Yeah,
to work with? Because you worked with him a number of times
I
afterwards as
still
well.
see him. Yes, yeah. He's one of my best friends still. I think he's about 9 years older than me, so that would make him 84. Still see him quite a bit, and we worked together for many years. And absolute gent. He knew every. Well, some designers would just leave you to it, and it just roughly. Vic knew everything he wanted to do, everything. So complete contrast to quite a few other designers. He knew exactly what he wanted and always come up with the goods. And we worked together for 10, 12, 13 years and never a crossword. So great guy. But he doesn't like talking about or being on camera, right? So, yeah.
So would I be right in thinking that one story you worked on was The Brain of Morbius?
When I did the drawings for all that, we set it all up, and Stephen Bundy was our head of design, and he came in and said, "Oh, great set, looks lovely. I don't know if you've ever seen the set, Brain of Morbius." Right. Well, the columns, we didn't realise at the time, they look like giant phalluses, penises. Oh God, you know, because if you have a look at it, so hopefully nobody's. It was unintentional.
Your son came into the studio and met Tom Baker, am I right in thinking?
Oh yeah, Tom Baker. Yeah, well, I was there when Tom Baker. What's the word? Transmognification, when they go from one doctor to another, and Dr. Baker was laying on the trolley or whatever we had, and he wanted he said, "Oh, Les, could you put a light switch, as if it's a light switch, so I can pull it, and it would change, so it would go dark." So I got the carpenter to put a bracket on, and I asked, and there was a strike on at the time, and I tied a little bit of string onto the bracket, and I was nearly thrown out the studios. It's not your job. And in the end, I was bumped around the studio, shouldered, and with the intention that I reacted and got the sack. But that was what it was like in those days with the unions. Terrible, really bad. And so I left the studio, told the manager, and they brought someone else in. But it was really awful in those days with the power of the unions. Yeah. And Tom Baker, used to have lunch with him up in the canteen with Roger Murray Leach. Roger Murray Leach, a great friend of mine still. And you know, Doctor Who favourite was Jelly Babies. You know, and he got that from Roger Murray Leach, who was always eating Jelly Babies. He said, "Oh, that's great. Oh, that's a nice little trick." So that was due to Roger Murray Leach. Yeah.
And am I right in thinking that you also had some experience with Canine when he started?
You know who?
With Canine, the robot dog.
I didn't have any. No, that's special effects, and I was in the studio when it first came in there, and with the teething problems, I think I've mentioned to you. I think probably Tony. Was it Tony Harding? Tony
Yes,
Harding. Yeah. He'd probably tell you with the problems they had on the first morning. The rate. Yeah, let him tell you.
And you touched upon working with Victor. That was on the infamous Shada that, of course, strike action stopped it being produced. How far along would you have got in that whole process of designs for what wasn't shot?
I think we were on to the last episode, so it'd be either 6 or 4 episodes. So the last one, what was that one? We'd gone up to Cambridge to see a laboratory where the first lasers were invented, just to get the feel of the laboratory, and that was a bit of history to going in there. So we modelled the laboratory on that Shada episode. We took elements, the Dexian framing, and I got into the studio first thing in the morning, nobody else around, and we had loads of books and magazines, nobody around, so I picked up a Reader's Digest, flicking through it to pass the time, and it was a feature on that room that we'd just been in. Out of all these books and piles, I picked up this book, and there it was. I went all shivery, and I got out the set because it was really so strange. Yeah, that was a disappointment. We got to the final afternoon, and we came back after lunch. The studio doors were locked. Our coats, our tools, everything was in the studio, and we couldn't get them out. So I think we got them out after a few days, but that was another reason, another strike. That was a shame, but now it's become quite popular. They've tried to do different versions of, I think they've animated it. Not that I've seen it. I was never a real Doctor Who fan, but we used to get Doctor Who fans come into our office. I don't know how they got into the studio. They weren't staff. They'd get into the television centre and they'd find out who was working on Doctor Who. They were really obsessed with Doctor Who. And they'd come in and they'd see our reset photographs and they'd say, on that corridor, someone would chase so-and-so, and this, oh, that's when they turned the corner here. So they knew more than we did. So, yeah. And some of those people, that fans, actually got jobs in the BBC just so they could be near Doctor Who. Strange people. Yeah.
As an assistant, would you have made it out onto location as well, or was it just studio side?
Yeah. No, we were all part of the team. I can't think of any. Oh yeah, we were Cambridge. There was some locations for Shada. Out in the fields, I think we took the TARDIS with us. I can't remember much about it. So yeah.
Away from Doctor Who, you worked on so many other series. We say. Day of the Triffids with Victor, but also Survivors. And I think, particularly in these sort of rather odd times, Survivors is very poignant.
Parallel, yeah. Because if you look at the opening credits of Survivors, you'll see planes going here, going there, landing, and then spreading the disease around the world, which is more or less what happened in this case.
Something like that that's done a lot on location. Would that have been more a sort of set dressing thing rather than design? But I imagine it kept you just as busy.
Yeah, I don't think there was much design in the studio. Yeah, well, there was. The University College or whatever it is in London. That was exterior, and then we did the interior for that one. But most of it was locations up in Yorkshire, I think it was. Packs of dogs and farms, decrepit. Yeah. I'll have to give that some thought as well.
But was that night quite nice to do, to be away from London for quite a long period of time?
Yeah. I say I'm a bird watcher, so everywhere I go, I've got a day off, I'd go up to Bempton or wherever. I always had the book Where to Watch Birds, so I had a bit of free time as well. So we usually have an afternoon or a day off. But it's always nice to get back home though. With a family, but you're earning a living, so you have to do this thing.
And of course, as well as working in drama, you also did a lot in comedy, things like Only Fools, Some Others Don't Have Them. How different is it to work on a comedy series?
No, it's all the same. I've worked on children's programs. And you find that children's programs, that the staff are much nicer. They're not so intense. You get on a drama and it's, they're all nice people, but children's programs I like because the team were much more relaxed and open to ideas, and so we worked across the whole broad range of programs.
And who would have been the designers that you particularly learned from as you went through the BBC?
Well, Vic was the most. A lot of them would give you an idea and left you to design it almost, and just give you an idea. Vic really. I worked with him for so long. Yeah.
And the series that I believe you were art director for was The Demon Headmaster, which I loved as a child.
Oh.
What is it, do you think, about that makes it, I think, quite sinister, particularly for a children's series?
I can't remember much about that one either. they all just roll into one after a while. So you have to look at some of these programs and think, oh, right, remember that one. You know, I worked on, you asked me about Miss Marples, and there's only a few things you can remember. You can't remember everything. And you tend to remember just a few highlights. There's just so many. I wish I'd have written things down or taken more photographs. And but no, I can't remember much about that as well. No.
What would have been your sort of standout jobs? Which series really are very vivid to you?
One in particular, it was a drama with Marge Pratt. She didn't do a lot of dramas or lots of work, but I only worked with her once, and we did some fantastic sets. One was the Old Bailey, and we couldn't. We arranged to go and measure up in the Old Bailey, but we were given 10 minutes, no photographs. I found one stock photograph, and we went into the courtroom, and I did a quick measure up, and the studios, I think the BBC workshop were going through problems. They were being taken over, being outsourced, and they were really keen to do a good job for us. And the set they did for us was fantastic. People were coming in to look at the courtroom. It was unrecognisable from the real thing, and it had to be shot, and it had to be lit, and Marge did a brilliant job with the props. And that was a real highlight, because we did corridors in prisons that we used real glass, which we weren't really used to use glass in the studio, but we did, and it made such a difference with the reflections. And that a wanted man that was. I don't suppose anyone's ever seen it, but yeah, one of the highlights for me. And I don't think it's seen much yet.
And how had the BBC changed from when you started to when you left?
It got too top heavy, and the budgets were getting cropped. It changed. It was when I started as a carpenter. They had bigger budgets. No, it had changed. I think too much administration, bureaucracy, and but I'd been there 30 odd years, so it was a huge jolt to go out as freelance staff. But luckily, I never had a day off since working for as freelance staff. So it was frightening leaving the BBC after 30 odd years, but it worked out okay for me. Working in different studios and different people. It's always worrying. It's like going back to school, working with different people. When at the BBC, you're working with people you know. You work with them on all different programs, and it's quite easy to working with people you actually get to know. But going outside, different people, it's like going back to school. Yeah, that sort of feeling.
But I imagine a freelance way of working, from your point of view, actually isn't any different. It's just, as you say, the people you're working with.
Well, the difference is you didn't always have an office. You worked from home, and you tried to do everything on your computer or printer, and send it off in small sections, where normally you used to big drawings. You were doing little drawings and patching them all together. So yeah, but you get over things, and I think I worked at Teddington Studios quite a lot in the end. That was quite good, being close to home. So it's all different. And the weirdest one I worked on, I don't think you've ever seen it, Shock Treatment. You've never heard of it. Sky, I think it was. You just have a look. It was all really weird. It was set in a mental home, a disused mental home, and they brought people in who thought they were going to appear on TV on a program, and they were subjected to mock torture, really shocked. And I'll go into that in detail on another occasion, but I've got to go. I've got to help out on a wildlife pond, and I've got a little team of people there waiting. So is that all right? If you can always come back.
Yeah. Well, on the note of that, very different and unusual series, I'd just like to say thank you very much for your time, Les. It's been lovely to talk to you.
All right then, lovely. See you again. Cheers.